Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis, a podcast dedicated to the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. Join us as we seek the truth and travel the long road to justice. What's going on, everybody? It's Monday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, and court is currently in recess for lunch. So we wanted to hop on and do a quick little update about what we've heard this morning, and I'm exhausted.
I know, right?
I'm very exhausted. So we're going to jump right in. Right out of the gate, they just talked about JJ, the adoption, his legal name at birth, verified Lori and Charles were the ones that adopted him. And then they kind of, Prosecutor Wood moves into the day of the welfare check. So what did we learn about that, Fruit Loop? Just that, what was Chad's reaction to detectives when they asked about Lori?
Yeah, so he kind of said he didn't, what was it he said? He knew Lori through Alex or something.
Yeah, so okay, so keep in mind, they've been married 2 weeks at this point. He didn't know her phone number, and he said that essentially he knew Alex better than he knew his wife.
Yeah. Lie.
Yeah, big old lie. Ooh. So they just established some things about that welfare check. We learned that they had done about 20 hours of surveillance on Lori, and there was never any indication that the kids were there.
Yeah.
They also went inside the residences. Now, they got confused. Pryor got confused on these apartment numbers, we think.
Yeah, and Detective Hermosello, I think is how you say it.
I'd just say detective.
I want to say Hermie. That's what I want to call him.
Okay.
So he did as well, and unless the lease agreements are different, from what we knew from the beginning, Lori was in 175, Melanie Pulowski was in 174, and Alex was in 107. But in his testimony, he just stated that Alex's name was on the lease in 175, and Melanie was 174, and Lori was 107.
But they also pointed out that, from what they could tell, Alex and Lori were living together.
Yes, possibly, but didn't know how long.
Right.
He asked him, do you have any evidence that shows that they were living together at the same time or something?
Mm-hmm.
And Detective Hermosello, he couldn't say for sure.
Right. So they also talk about following them to Hawaii. The detective went out there, assisted with surveillance of Chad and Lori. They did the search warrant on the SUV they had in Hawaii, also went into the residence, and there were no sign of kids. So after talking about that, they went on to June 9th, which was the search warrant at Chad's residence, and that's, as we know, when the kids' bodies were found.
Yeah.
And
hey, backing up real quick, one of the things I thought was interesting was they asked, because the detective had asked Chad, I guess Chad finally come and said, here's your number. And he said Chad told him the reason he didn't tell him the truth to start with because he felt he was accusing him of something.
yeah. And they retained attorneys pretty much right after that welfare check, which
Yeah.
I did not know.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that's interesting. So they went to Hawaii, obviously. He was there to do surveillance. He also assisted, I believe, in her arrest. And so then they moved into okay, one thing I do want to point out, they're not showing any of these exhibits on video right now. So anything that's coming in as evidence, they cannot show. I assume, maybe that's because of sensitivity if something's going to be presented later.
Sure.
The one thing the detective pointed out was the day of the search. Chad got in his vehicle during the search warrant, and he was on the phone in his driver's seat, and he said that Chad was looking very intently over his right shoulder, blah, 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 towards the pond area where they were excavating.
Yeah.
And Pryor, who I think is just completely out of his league. What are your thoughts right now on Pryor before we get into the testimony?
He's a jerk.
Yeah, he's trying to seem like a bulldog, but he's more kind of like a confused puppy.
So he accused the detective of not remembering dates.
Yeah, and the detective's like, this is an 8-month investigation. Forgive me if I can't remember every date and time I talked to somebody.
But then after that, he messed up a date and he said, see, I'm just like you. I can't remember well either.
Well, he messed up the date that JJ was last at school.
Yeah, that was classic. It was crickets.
He said,
he goes, so JJ was in school on the 23rd, and the detective's like, no, that's incorrect.
Yeah, and Pryor had a moment where he looked like he had been hit between the eyes.
Yeah.
And so then they move into the day the kids were found. This is very graphic. So just a warning, if you are sensitive to this, you might not want to listen much further. We're going to go into what they found. Yeah.
Real quick, we forgot to talk at the beginning who's in the courtroom. So we know Kay and Larry are in there, and there's some other people in there, but it doesn't look like anybody with Chad.
No. The lady sitting next to Kay, the blonde, she looks like she has a name tag on. I would assume maybe that's a victim's advocate.
Yeah, and I think there was I saw somebody on Facebook post that they were going with them or something. So
yeah, probably.
Some connection there. And there's a few other people in there, but there's Chad, they're not wearing masks.
Oh, no, they actually just, and that was asked of them, and they just declined. Felt like it would hinder his communication with Chad. And, I mean, at that point, I think the judge just has to allow him not to wear it.
Yeah, and real quick, one thing that stood out to me, when detectives were trying to locate Chad and Lori, he testified that their cell phones were off.
Yeah. So that was pretty, I'm sure, deliberate. So going to the house, they talked about Chad being in his vehicle looking towards the pond area. Chad's attorney tried to say that there wasn't a straight line to look there. I think he was trying to discredit the detective's testimony that Chad was not remotely interested in what they were doing over there.
Yeah. And the detective he didn't say he had a straight line of sight. And he said he was looking in that direction.
Yeah. And Pryor was just, I think it was a really pathetic attempt to say that, my client wasn't interested in what they were doing in the pond area, which is.
Yeah. And he shocks me. Like, he's asked some questions, and then he's actually like tried to cross-examine the detective when Wood was still.
Yeah, when he was doing his direct.
Yeah.
And I think Pryor just has to throw a lot of stuff against the wall and see if anything sticks. And he has had a couple of objections sustained. So, I guess on some level it's worked. It's very petty stuff, though. It doesn't really, it's not really anything that's worth writing home about.
Yeah. Can I have a date, a time, and a location? Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I don't know. So the one thing the detective mentioned was that one of the things that stood out to him was in the area where JJ was buried by the pond, that there was an area that had sod that had much shorter grass in an area with longer weed growth, which, obviously indicates that grass was recently planted.
Yeah, and sod comes in patches, so it's like squares normally. I mean, sometimes it's in rolls, but I've laid a ton of it. But so you put that where you want grass to grow, obviously.
Yeah,
in a hurry.
So once they started removing the earth, they took off the top layer of sod and the soil, and that revealed 3 large white rocks that were flat. So they removed those, and under that was a thin wood paneling.
Yep. And
then once they removed that paneling, the odor of a decomposing body was very evident.
Yeah. And he was on the phone. I don't know if you said that, but when he was in his car, he was on the phone with someone.
Yeah, Chad was on the phone, probably with his lawyer. I don't know.
Yeah.
So as they excavated the area, they found a black plastic bag with a round object protruding through the dirt. And that round object was the crown of JJ's head.
Yep.
So they cut through the plastic, and underneath that was a white plastic underneath that. And that was over his head. And when they cut through that, they saw human hair, which was brown. And he said it was JJ's haircut, which was kind of distinct. It looked like most of his head was shaved, shorter, and then the top was longer.
Yeah, and the bag was like a garbage bag. It sounded like almost one of those Glide Flex bags. Because it had the red strap or whatever.
Right. They did say it was a garbage bag over his head.
It had waffle-like emblems or something, so I'm guessing that's like that Flex.
I tell you what, they can find out a lot of things from those plastic bags we've learned.
Yeah, because they have their own pattern themselves.
Yeah. So they removed the body and put it in the coroner's vehicle, and they brought it back to Madison Memorial Hospital and put that in the morgue. This is about the time we saw Larry breaking down in court.
I felt so bad.
This is, around this testimony here. So once they removed JJ's body, obviously, we know from watching that that's when they arrested Chad. And so they were...
I didn't realize it, and I know they were there 2 days, but they didn't take Tylee's stuff till the following day, it sounded like.
Yeah, that was kind of what I thought too, is that they removed JJ on that first day, and then the following day is when they removed Tylee's remains.
Yeah, so maybe time, I guess. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
It was such a long... I know they were out there all day, so...
Yeah. So this is... So before we get into the condition of JJ's body, Wood goes on to say that the evidence recovery team were excavating the fire pit. They dug down, and he described it as a mass of burnt flesh and charred bone they came upon.
Yeah, and it was in a green bucket.
Well, no, they took the mass out of the ground, and then underneath that, I believe, was the green bucket that had charred flesh in it.
Okay, yeah, I know he said green bucket, and then under that was a partial skull.
A partial human skull was found underneath that green bucket.
Yep.
So we're back at the coroner's office at this point, and I didn't hear that our audio went out. I believe they were saying that JJ was in red pajama pants, socks, and there was a light blue blanket in there with him. There was duct tape covering his body on his head, arms, and feet.
Yeah, this...
It's disturbing stuff. It's not pleasant to talk about. It's what the hearing is about today. So we are going to talk about what they said. So just you can turn off right now.
Yeah, mute if you don't want to hear this.
Yeah. So he had duct tape wrapped tightly from his chin to his forehead, and there were several layers of duct tape.
Yeah.
So what they did was they used a small instrument to cut the tape away and expose the face. They found additional duct tape stretched from one side of his jaw to the other.
Yeah, so it was like he had it over his mouth.
Right. And the detective at that point, once the tape was removed from the face, he recognized the child as JJ. His hands were folded at chest level, and the duct tape was continuously wrapped from his elbows to his hands, and there were several layers of that.
Yeah, it was like he said it was like his hands were bigger because there was so much tape. So it was like his hands were on his chest.
Right.
And from his elbow to his hand. So it almost sounded like his hands were like bigger because he had so much tape on them.
Right. He referred to it as a ball of duct tape.
Yeah.
That was wrapped around his hands.
And he was bound, I think, under that, didn't he say?
Yes. His wrists were bound on top of the hands being bound. And then also his ankles were bound with duct tape.
Yeah.
For Tylee's autopsy, the melted green bucket with charred flesh and bone was at the morgue. And so that is kind of a summary of the remains and the condition of the remains, which very easy to see how you get the egregious charge for Tylee.
Yeah.
For them to refer to that as just a mass, and we know that there was nothing identifiable on her, It drives all this home.
Yeah.
We followed this case for months and months, but now we're hearing for the first time specifics about these kids. And, this is not pleasant to say, but you have a theory now about JJ and maybe how he died.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of another reason why he would be bound in those ways. The duct tape under the massive amount of duct tape. I mean, why would you need to do that if he wasn't alive? And that's tough to say.
Yeah.
But I don't know why you would need to do that. And it just points and just I mean, I don't want to say clarifies, but it just drives home that they're monsters.
It does. And we don't know for sure. There hasn't been a cause of death for either kid released. I don't know if we may get that today. I'm not sure if we will. They may not have to, they don't really need to prove a cause of death. At this point, this is only about concealing the remains.
Yeah. And all that duct tape, there's going to be fingerprints.
There's going to be so much evidence on that.
Yeah. You have lip prints, fingerprints, DNA, like all that stuff.
Yeah. So the rest of up until the break, there just was a couple of little arguments about. It almost seems like Pryor was trying to sort of go the route of, but have you been trained to identify remains that have been burned?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, no, but it is a bad smell, and I know that from experience. I think where he's going with this, in addition to talking about the number of houses around Chad's, I think maybe he's going to go the route of saying that, well, nobody smelled anything super foul in the neighborhood, so maybe Tylee wasn't burned there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems like maybe that's how he's setting this up.
And that, to me, would point to possibly Chad wasn't around when, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the
right.
where it looks like he's going.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I think with just what we've heard, and I don't know, and I think maybe Chad is going to turn on Lori, and I think we're starting to see that now. I think he's maybe going to sort of point the finger at Chad and Lori.
Yeah,
Alex and Lori, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and one thing that came up was when he was trying to say, okay, when he was talking about Alex and Lori living together, and he made a couple of comments about them having a close relationship. He asked a question about that, and that looks like that's the road it's going down.
I think so. I mean, and we've said it before, I don't see any justifiable defense that doesn't include, them. They have to turn on each other at some point.
Exactly.
It's every man for himself. I think that Chad and Lori both at this point realize they're not going anywhere. And the best thing they can do is try to make the sentences at least to where they would have a chance for parole at some point. But yeah, I think we're starting to see the beginnings of Chad, take care of himself.
And Pryor, he is so frustrating. Like if you guys could be in here with us while we're watching this, like we're sitting on opposite, like our normal seats, and I'm like yelling.
Oh yeah, a couple of times you've startled me because we can't see each other because our monitors are huge, and that's a good thing because we would never during a podcast, especially.
Yeah, we can't.
I'll say that the mood in here today is a bit somber with what we've heard.
Yeah,
but we both just sort of between Pryor's objections and thinking, what in the world? This is kind of a Hail Mary, and then just hearing the condition of the bodies, it's just, yeah. Yeah,
he just asks sometimes, I'm sorry, but they're dumb questions.
They're very stupid.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, you can tell that Judge Edens and Wood both are getting very frustrated with this defense attorney.
Most definitely.
To put it mildly.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes, like, it's like he can't remember or he doesn't know, and Chad has a notepad in front of him, and he'll like point at the notepad to him.
Yeah.
Like he'll, like.
Yeah, Chad's, I will say Chad seems a little bit more rattled than previous hearings. He's gulping a lot.
Yeah, he's got that deep swallow.
You've pointed that out. And he's active with his defense attorney. I mean, he's pointing things out. He's correcting his defense attorney when his defense attorney says something that maybe isn't the way Chad wants him to say it.
Yeah. And he also, I've been watching his eye contact. He doesn't make eye contact with the detective much.
Well, yeah, because that's probably just shame,
Yep.
sort of a subconscious. I can't look at you. You know what I did.
Yeah, he's kind of looking down. Like he'll look over every once in a while, but he's kind of looking like towards Edens, but then down. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I just think this. I don't know that they're going to finish today. Just at the pace that Pryor has set with his objections, and they've had to take a couple of recesses for Edens to, I guess, go look at law to figure out whether or not to overrule or sustain those objections. But I think Pryor at this point, excuse me, the burden of proof is on the state, but I think Pryor has to do whatever he feels he needs to do to throw some doubt. And the only way he's able to do that right now is to sort of, I don't want to say attack, but sort of go at the detective with very small technical time. And, well, is it possible that maybe Chad said he knew Alex better than Lori, which is laughable in itself?
Yeah, I know. Like he was married to her.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of comical to say. But is it possible that maybe he said he knew Alex better than? I mean, it's not going to make a difference at the end of the day.
No. No.
And I think that that's just sort of where maybe the fact that he has no defense comes in. Then all you can do is try to say, well, you're not qualified to do the investigation you did, so we need to throw this out.
Exactly. And Detective Hermosello, I think is how you say it.
I just say detective. I'm terrible with names.
Yeah. He's had, like, what did we say, 8 months, of working on this case. And I couldn't remember all those dates. I think he's done really well.
Yeah. One thing to point out, too, Chad's lawyer is referring to Lori as Lori Vallow, not Lori Vallow Daybell, like she has requested at every other hearing she's been at, which brings me back to I think Chad or somebody is turning on the other, because we know Lori wasn't at that last hearing about streaming this. Now, it could have been that her defense attorney is 4 hours away and it's just not economical for him to go there for a 15-minute hearing, but it is something to ponder.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see.
I don't know what you think, but if they're going to go the route that Alex did all of this and maybe Lori and Chad had no idea, then they're going to have a really hard time explaining that text to Tammy Daybell.
Yeah.
The day that Tylee was buried, right after she was buried. It was minutes after Alex left that Chad texted, and what did he say?
Yeah, that he had shot a raccoon and buried it in the backyard. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think they're going to be very successful if they go that route. Seems to me that Wood, did you see the size of the briefcase he walked in with?
Yeah, it was like he needed a wheelbarrow.
It was like he needed a roller suitcase.
Yeah.
It was big.
Yeah.
So,
and remember, overt acts, and we talked about this, overt acts is showing that he lied. Basically, he lied. And we already know they lied to the police. They said Tylee was at BYU. Alex said JJ was okay, and I thought it was cool. Like, detective goes, when he tells him that, he says, yeah, that's not right because she's the one wanting the welfare check.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we get in the whole deal that we'll see, Lori says JJ's with Melanie Gibb at the movies. Then the other one is Lori telling the school she's going to homeschool him, and he's already deceased.
Right.
When she makes that phone call, he's already deceased.
And two, the one thing they did notice is the 23rd, which is the day, that was the day he was buried, correct? But on the 23rd of September.
Yeah, that's a Monday.
Okay, so the 22nd, he was last seen alive. The 23rd, he had an unexcused absence from school. On the 24th, he had an excused absence. So that means that Lori had to have called the school and said, JJ's not going to be there today.
Exactly.
She knows he's dead. There's a reason he's not at school.
Yep.
So many holes in this story.
So those things in themselves,
they're going to nail them.
Show conspiracy.
They're going to nail them to the wall. I've seen so many people lately. I'm afraid there's just not much to get Lori on. We don't know what they have on Lori. We haven't been told the first thing by investigators, really, other than desertion and being included in Alex's phone pings.
Yeah.
They've got evidence on her. I think if you're watching this, just what we've learned, we've got a long ways to go before we even know part of this picture.
Yeah, this is one testimony.
One witness.
Yeah, one witness, one testimony so far.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that prior to today, Mark Means had kind of settled in a little bit and not been as obnoxious.
Right.
On the obnoxious scale right now, Pryor is number one.
Yeah. We're going to let Mark Means take a backseat to obnoxious.
Yeah.
This guy, and two, I try not to judge people if I don't know them, but the tone that he makes when he is arguing that Pryor makes, it is so annoying. It's just like he's demanding to be taken serious.
Yeah.
More than anything to me. It seems very desperate to try to seem like a big bulldog.
Yeah.
He's up against the state prosecutor. This guy is a small town attorney, and kind of seen the same thing in Atlanta with the shooting death of Mr. Aubrey by the 3 white guys. One of the guy's attorneys is just about as a fish out of water as Pryor is.
Yeah.
This is going to be a long, very painful day for a lot of reasons, just for what we're learning and then having to listen to Pryor nonstop. Raise these objections that clearly are frustrating everybody but him.
And they did do that sidebar. So how they're doing sidebars, if it's detailed, they go into judges' chambers.
Yeah.
Because of, I guess, the plexiglass. Like the one little one they did at the glass.
Uh-huh.
But at the beginning, remember?
Yeah, they went back.
They went back for something. And he said something about it'll make this quicker or something.
Well, we're still waiting for that.
Yeah, after 35 million objections.
Well, you have to look. This started, they broke for lunch at 2. So it was 2 solid hours for one witness. We still have, I believe, 3 other state witnesses between the FBI and the forensics. And I think maybe one Rexburg. And anybody else they may call, they're going to have to call people maybe other than investigators, which is Melanie Gibb, David Warwick. I believe they're in town for that. They're not in the courtroom, but I don't see this wrapping up today at all. I think this will go maybe most of the day tomorrow if it goes at this pace.
And I want to say I won the tie deal because it is blue ties today.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fruit Loop, you get, I'll give you a high five.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to take a break for lunch ourselves so we don't pass out and then we can't live tweet it. Follow us on Twitter, Pretty Lies Alibi, at Pretty Lies Alibi. I am live tweeting everything that comes out that's important as best I can. And our website, we are running this feed. What's the website, Fruit Loop?
www.prettyliesandalibis.org.
So we have this feed up on our website right now. There has been a couple of audio issues. Seems to have fixed itself right before break. We're going to follow the next half of this. So follow us on social media, and we will do a bigger podcast for you later tonight where we'll sum kind of everything up about what's happened today. If there's another break, there may be just probably after lunch, there may be a couple of 15-minute breaks. We won't hop on. We'll just save some stuff for tonight. But all right, guys, we're covering this for you, and we will be here all day.